DE versus the Sceptical Heretic, Part 2. I've made a little diagrammatic representation of your arguments. So without further ado, the Sceptical Heretic claims that any ideology, including antinatalism, requires an objective moral yardstick to support its contentions. I would like to dispute this by counter-arguing that in all modern human societies and pre-modern human societies, necrophilia and paedophilia are and were agreed upon as repugnant and an abomination that must not be tolerated within the context of a society's ideals, values and norms. There therefore seems to be universal value in certain claims, despite the fact that such claims cannot be justified merely through the use of logic, which is precisely what would be required if an ideology truly required an objective moral yardstick. The Sceptical Heretic opines the admittedly subjective view that he finds war morally problematic, regardless of the reasons or motivations behind it. Given that he finds the idea of people fighting and killing one another in large numbers distasteful, presumably because it involves a great deal of suffering for both the people involved in such conflicts and also for the loved ones who are left in mourning when their father, son or husband is taken away from them, it seems strange that he even questions the notion of universal suffering. Obviously, he has not troubled himself overly much in order to learn about the universality and frequency of armed conflict in the sentient, self-reflexive pile of DNA molecules that we currently call the human race. Allow me, my adversary, to enlighten you on this matter. I hope, therefore, that the Sceptical Heretic can now concede that there is such an abstract notion of suffering that acts as a place marker for the feelings and emotions experienced by many people in the world under certain circumstances, regardless of some lofty nihilistic philosophical position they can adopt in a philosophical discussion which renders Homo sapien views towards good and bad irrelevant. I also hope that he can now agree that the universality of this suffering can be confirmed by just a fleeting glance at the history records of war between human beings in the last 50 years. However, perhaps he might prefer to kowtow to any philosophical musings that a couple of vultures may have on the subject of whether suffering is universal, or if it makes at least some loose sense, at least, to understand that people trying to kill you is not a particularly appealing situation to be in, or that losing people you love is not a particularly uplifting experience, emotionally speaking. I accepted in my last video to you that the notion of an objective morality written into the very fabric of being must be dismissed out of hand as a superstition and a socially constructed myth that has no correspondence with reality in an immoral and meaningless universe. However, it is my firm contention that there is a reason to adopt a subjective morality that should be regarded as an objective morality if, and only if, the consequences of living in accordance with this socially constructive subjective morality that I argue should be regarded as an objective morality would result in its anticipated consequences in an unambiguous and undeniable manner that can be demonstrated through cold hard logic alone. I would argue here that there is in fact a moral system we can adopt as individuals that would objectively reduce the amount of pain experienced in the next generation in the only clearly anticipated manner we can manage as individually morally responsible agents, and that this moral system is that of antinatalism. The philosophical stance can be supported by the Benatarian asymmetry. I would like you to view my Zargarg Needs Your Help video and invite you to vote yes or no, or alternatively deconstruct the thought experiment it presents if you feel it is irrelevant to the subject in hand. I'm sure that a man of your undoubted intellect is capable of such a deconstruction if you feel that it is inappropriate to the debate we are discussing here. I look forward to your response.